Oh man, I've been playing this game for a long. I mean, it is technically 2 games, but I went to start it up on Steam. It's like 85 hours. No, what did it say? I'm just making up numbers. 85 isn't a real number. 85 hours. Which I guess accounts for a little bit of, like, waiting on the title screen or whatever else, but no, like, to have played this for 85 hours, I think puts it at the longest game that I have streamed, if we count it all as one game. Actually, it definitely does. What would even come close? La Mulana 2 was pretty long. Radiant Historia, Perfect Chronology was pretty long. Neither of them were 80 hours. So we had some big revelations in the last stream. We learned that there is a secret organization that does carry out the Reaper killings, and that supposedly both Inspector Gregson and Giselle Brett from the 2 Japan trials were both a part of it, and that she was the assassin, and that Gregson would hire someone. He paid someone. He gave someone his detective identification and would pay them to go somewhere and pretend to be him as an alibi for meetings of some kind that he would have with someone. Whatever illegal activities related to trying to get, whoops, I, as usual, forgot to do something. There we go. And we're now trying to find out more. As usual, it is, well, no, I guess we're still like, Van Zieks is still the prime suspect, like, even though we're uncovering this, this odd information. We haven't really proved that he was killed the day before when, Van Zieks was not there, but, I guess compared to some other cases, it's, like, somewhat reasonable that he is still on trial, and that we haven't just fully gone, okay, he's not the guy, now we, the police, will go find the real criminal instead of you, the defense attorney. But no, so we're trying to find that out. And we just got done talking to Daly about his memories coming back of the time that he was working at the jail. And the execution, he wasn't present for the execution, and when he went in to inspect the coffin or whatever, it was already nailed shut, and so he did not look inside. And for that apparent failing, he was going to be fired, and he jumped out the window in what I guess they're calling a suicide attempt. And then he was really fired, and then he panhandled for 10 years in secret. Where shall we go? Is anything marked? Oh, a new location. No, there isn't. Is it to go back here? Why a shotgun and an axe? Clearly you only need one or the other. If you shoot someone, they don't need to be axed anymore, and vice versa. Oh, back again, are you? Yes. Hello. I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found them, eh? Vigil. Yes. Luckily. Well, anywho. The laddie doesn't work here no more, so your case is not to do with Barclay. I wouldn't have let you to get the wrong idea about that. Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop. And then they shot him. Aye, Kimber, you can very well. So how about a wee handcuff biscuit? Oh, they really are like little handcuffs, and hard as irons, too. That's not good. Is it? So, what's brought you down here today? Oh, well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asugi's cell. That's what I was forgetting. I'm like, there's something important that I'm forgetting. It's that he says that even though Genshin was not supposed to have access to, I almost said pen and paper, quill and parchment in his cell, that he was given some, and he wrote something that he was calling a last will and testament, and that it then went missing and was not found in his cell or on his person. Presumably, we don't know this yet, but presumably it made its way to Kazuma, and that he that was his reason for wanting to come to England, was to do whatever the will said to do. I think it's been called the Asogi Papers or something. Did I not say? Gregson's death is not to do with things that might have happened at Barclay. Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not fool around with irrelevant details. His expressions changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. Just combed his hair and told me to go home and be a family man. That murderous botched execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour, aye. A shocking embarrassment. Because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye, for shame. The coroner who confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Sith. And my chief warder at the time, Vigil, who is in charge of the whole affair. But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it. The rascal wouldn't say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs. Oh, how could I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. That's not true. I'm sure the LD 50 on iron is quite low. Don't eat iron. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he? I didn't like to say, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you not think he wouldn't have jumped from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. You wouldn't say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, I kinda shouldn't all responsibility myself. I shouldn't have let him deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody what kens what went on at the time now. With Gregson having been murdered, and Dr. Sith forbidden from having any visitors. I didn't hear about that. No visitors? Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away. Well, we're not going home empty-handed. And I wouldn't dream of sending you a pack and what? No, Kimmer, here, take a handcuff or two. Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become a... Is that how you spell anemia in Britain? Sup, Shoob? We're learning all kinds of things about British health spellings, I guess. Wouldn't want to become anemic. I suppose, if there's anybody who might still ken about what happened back then, it'd be that lass from the forensic division, Maria Gorey. Maria Gorey? Aye, Sith's daughter. She didn't have no more, just the one. But the wee bairns followed in her mam's footsteps. You didn't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand. Ah! The weird person. The weird Phoenix Wright character. Where did she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Dr. Seth's daughter, Maria Gori. We could do with talking to her. Zoop. So she's Dr. Seth's daughter, but her surname is Gori? Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure, but it didn't ken the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching her mum, working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances, and decided to do the same with her own life. I cannot understand it myself. Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother. Perhaps. Anywho, she was given charge of Grigson's autopsy, I believe. Are there no other, like... Is there no one else that you could have do it? Given the flagrant conflict of interest? Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. Someone told me once that Louis Lassie always loved her mem stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumour that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby. Who would play coffin dance while putting their child to sleep? Terrible. Very catchy as well. Well then, perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy case 10 years ago. The autopsy from the case. I'd say there's a fighting chance at least. After all, it was a life-changing case for all of us. We really need to speak to Miss Gori herself about this, I think. How do you know it's not Mrs. Gori? She could be married. Well, thank you very much. I'm not happy about any part of this. It took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you not get up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions. I'm sorry. I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone. Can you not just stay away now? Leave me alone and dinna come back here, eh? Well, after we've had our third conversation, let's not be ridiculous. How did you come to ken about that, laddie? There's not many folk here in the prison. There's not many folk even here in the prison who have heard of those papers. I can't tell him. Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament, is that right? The professor's, or rather, Genshin Asugi's. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy. Oh, is that the end of the silent treatment? But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it? Havers knew. You're off half-cocked there. I think you didn't quite get your facts straight. It was there, in the cell. Exactly where it should have been. Oh, not what we heard elsewhere. Let me just have a wee hawk around in here. I'm sure I can find it. I hear you are. See? The last will and testament of Genshin Asugi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course, I cannot read a word of those Japanese squiggles. The main runes. Clocks don't need hands. That's why they have a face. No, wait. It does need hands. The thinker doesn't have actually, it does have hands. It has 2 hands. But I mind it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland. Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it. So these are the Asugi papers? Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asugi, no doubt about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. After all this... What? At least pretend to be speaking American. What the hell is a stramash? Noun. Scottish, I guess. Strumash or stramush? It can be pronounced either way, and it means an uproar or disturbance. And as for slayster, that's not a real word. I was right, it's not a real word. After all, the stramash that slayster of an execution. We sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it. I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo, just in case. Biddy-doo-boom. One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Oh, yes? Those papers are not to do with Gregson's death. Prefer it if you didn't make no mention of them outside this office. Or rather, I wouldn't just prefer it, consider it an order from the highest levels of our government. I understand and will disobey. I promise not to do it unless it is in my own interest to do so, or it puts me closer to winning the game. Last will and testament of Genshin. I, Genshin Asugi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asugi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, in the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again. But I regret nothing about my chosen path. What I mean, not if I get the bad ending. Getting the bad ending isn't in his interests, but I'll do it. I'll do it if it gives me an achievement. So we don't have the option to visit the scientist lady. I thought that's what we were going to do next. Perhaps not. Oh, maybe we have to go to him to say, can I have permission to visit her? No arguments, Prosecutor Asugi. You will continue with the trial exactly as I have instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly. It's Kazuma-sama. Don't shout. This is a library. Defying Lord Strongheart by the sound of it. He never did know when to back down. That's why I killed him. On your way now, Asugi. My lord. How come he gets to have two swords? Also, is one of the... I guess I did give him his sword back, right? I now have no swords. It's now 2 swords against 0. Rather unfair. I have nothing but a grenade launcher. He left without saying a word. Yes? What are you doing here? Oh, well, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions, if you wouldn't mind. I wanted Von Zeke's trial concluded today. But Prosecutor Asugi's unwelcome inquiries are going to make it take longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, I'm losing even more precious time. Currently 2 hours, 55 minutes, 41 seconds, 42, 43. Then we must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed, Mr. Naruhodo. In a miraculous not even 5 minutes? Anyway, can't let the man's obvious bad move mood, put me off. I need information. Closed trial.
This country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years.
So the last one was the professor's? The trial of Genshin Asugi?
Correct.
Actually, we heard that originally you were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart.
Van Zieks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are 10 years later, with the son of the man Van Zieks had condemned, now looking to avenge his father's death in the same way.
They do say that what goes around comes around, but they don't say it in Japan, because it's English. They don't speak English there. Nobody does.
However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well.
Kazuma is?
I like my organization to run smoothly, in the exact manner that I prescribe. As with the giant clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others. Doves for emphasis.
Ah, so that's what all these gears in here are about. It's a metaphor.
If the young man refuses to mesh with the other parts of my great machine, I will be forced to take steps.
What do you mean?
Not something with which you need concern yourself.
I don't see any hands on this clock. It's because it's not 5 or 7 or half 5. So the hands wouldn't be all the way down here. They're further up.
In any case, all your questions will be answered tomorrow.
Does Prosecutor Asugi believe that Lord Van Zieks is the Reaper?
I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago, in that fateful closed trial, that Lord Van Zieks made a name for himself among the judiciary.
Is his pocket watch going to... Like, I just thought of that. Now that we're talking about clocks and hands, there is a pocket watch that is relevant to the current case. Is his pocket watch and the fact that he's always winding it going to be relevant?
But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of a criminal organization was acquitted, thanks to all the jurors being under duress.
But that's awful!
The man's freedom was short-lived. He lasted just 3 days.
Yes, let me see. He died in a rock slide at his place of work, I believe.
Correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey.
And people believed Lord Van Zieks was responsible?
He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to have been an accident.
So he must have had a solid alibi then.
Nevertheless, the mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances, ostensibly at the hand of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences.
Well, the Reaper's true identity may well be revealed by this trial.
And the impact that revelation would have on the British public cannot be understated.
Is that why it's a closed trial?
Precisely. Now, I shall have to ask you to excuse me. As of this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours.
Oh my, that is a long time.
And I hold you entirely responsible.
Even though we miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes, like I said we would. Actually, I said that we couldn't do it. I wonder if you might agree to us, talking with Prosecutor Asogi?
Discussions between the defense and the prosecution outside of the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I will make an exception in this case. Now go. You can find him in his office.
Oh, thank you. Is it alright if I take a shit without your permission? Telling me I can't go frickin' talk to my best friend. Let's go see him at once, Mr. Naruhodo. Kazuma's my best friend in the world, but I am a pushover. I'm really not at all sure I know how to talk to him at the moment. Boop, 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 boop. We have permission now. Let's pay Kazuma-sama a visit. The answer is usually no, so for no reason I will say yes. Because you asked nicely, and because you gave me a back rub. So, this is the office of Prosecutor Asogi now, is it? Kazuma-sama is doing so well for himself. Even though he's always forced to kneel on the floor Japanese style in that dark corner. It's his habit to sit Seiza style whenever he's working. Oh, there he is. Kazuma. I thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry? That you have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dream of advocating in British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second that it would be for the bad guys, prosecutors. Seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Kazuma-sama. I'm truly happy for you. And I am truly thankful to you, Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. I can even 58 hours later, I can never tell if I've said it right or if I mixed up the T and the K. It's Mikotoba. Mikotoba. And I'm pretty sure I never say Mitokoba. I need to stop doubting myself. If I say it fast, I'm not saying Mitokoba, because that's silly. That's not a name. Mikotoba. Ryunosuke. I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learnt a lot of things during my time in London, like the spelling of anemic, about how Susato-san's father was himself a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jigoku, and about what happened with your father. Then you'll have no difficulty understanding why I had no choice, why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. I want to hear it from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. It's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Burya. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain, when a bizarre series of coincidences led to those tragic events. I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I had no idea how much time had passed. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There was a posy of a freaking, like a pocket full of posy? Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What is that? I mean, I guess it means a bunch, like a bunch of flowers. A flower nosegay or bouquet. A posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize that I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room and headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? I don't remember. No. Yes. I didn't know what had happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. You have something you have to do, something else no one else can know about. Go to Great Britain. Your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. Out on deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship, and we were docked in a large port. It must have been Hong Kong. Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have the feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. Then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sound, the smells, the kanji. My head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back, and a sword, probably. Right? No, I guess he got that sword later. No money, of course. Oh, how terrifying for you. Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right. And on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, I finally arrived at Dover. That must have been some 3 months ago now. A formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and had literally nothing to his name, but he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. Of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zieks' apprentice, then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard, and by sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play. Would that have been your knowledge of the law? Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. As you do. And then, 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back, after the trial involving Drebber. Yes, I did. How's your dad? Oh, sorry. Ever since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream, which is also called Yume. Mark my words, Ryunosuke, I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. He was only a baby. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. Here, you can have it. Put it in the court record. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotova. Your father, Susato-san. Oh my! Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll be forever in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd told me. Oh. Then one day, a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it, assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer and that the writer cursed the Asogi name. Oh no! As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Okay, but more importantly, what about the Reaper's trial? Never mind your life's purpose. Let's talk about today. What we learned today in court turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Lord Van Zieks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the Inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the Inspector? Yes, Barak Van Zieks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave. No, he was merely saying that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame. Ultimately, it's people who condemn people. The law is just a tool that they use to do it. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma. On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its very best to silence whoever sent that letter, but someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear the resentment was always going to be a problem. But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing? There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree. Well, what did my father have to say about the letter? I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. What? Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him. Actually, it's way easier to do that than to tell the truth. And he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. To the other visiting student. He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily, before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief and died of anime. That's when I made up my mind that one day, zettai ni, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asugi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way. That's what the sword is for killing people who oppose him. I get it now. Oh, Kazuma-sama. Hey, do you want this back? Kazuma, this is your armband. I technically thieved it from you? Grave robbed you? Actually, I think it's yours now. No, it has your name on it. You're the defense lawyer. You have a talent for it. I've always known that you would. And now you've chosen to take that path in life. As your friend, I couldn't be happier for you, or more proud. Kazuma. So you keep hold of that. Besides, I am a prosecutor now. That armband would have no meaning for me. Well, if you're sure. Thank you, my friend. Would have been a nice touch if they, like, updated it or something. Oh, I might as well save. Accidental save. Far, far better alternative than accidentally not saving. Do I want to show him this? Oh. He's like, oh no, there's only, you can't show me anything outside of the courtroom. You must be confused, dummy. I showed you the armband, and you looked at that. You didn't say, only show me armbands inside of a courtroom. Oh, there must be something. Are you sure that's everything we need to? So I am supposed to present him with something. But it's not the Asogi papers? This? No. This came up in the trial, didn't it? Do you want to talk about it now instead of in the trial? As something a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes. There were some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence and the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too, so I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. The coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's a Dr. Gori. If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too. Of course, the last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. By Barclay Prison, you mean? You know it, do you? The prison is where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life. Kazuma-sama. Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Ryunosuke, I want to thank you. For what? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asogi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Always wanted to slash people to death. Karuma is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. I come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Karuma, is the symbol of the Asogi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for a surname and will appear in the series 100 years later as a bad guy. Really? Karuma. It does sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years later, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever at his side, which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. Then can I have the other sword that you're carrying? If that one's not special, it was an honor. Bum, 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 bum. Now, I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who has changed. I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Van Zieks given what happened. But the fact is, those events, in this case, are, well, unrelated? Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind. That man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the Inspector was killed. I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow, by whatever means necessary. I can't let you do that, Snake. I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer, but I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less. But you're supposed to take prisoners into the courtroom. That's how they get to their trial. Until tomorrow, then, in the Old Bailey. Old Bailey.